Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The old Ravenwood Cemetery seemed frozen in time. The tombstones, covered in moss and faded inscriptions, stood like silent ghosts beneath the gray sky. A cold wind whipped through the bare trees, rustling the dead leaves and carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. This place, forgotten by most of the locals, nevertheless held a secret that no one had dared reveal for 5 long years. In the center of the cemetery lay the grave of Clara Williams, a 17-year-old girl whose bright smile and boundless curiosity had once illuminated the village. Her sudden and mysterious disappearance had left the community in a state of shock, tinged with fear and grief. Rumors about the circumstances of her death had proliferated. Some spoke of an accident, others of an abduction, and a few whispers suggested a far darker act. No one had dared approach his grave for years. Yet, that morning, something unusual happened. 2 stray dogs, Rex, a sturdy black sheepdog, and Luna, a husky with bright, piercing eyes, made their way through the brambles surrounding the burial site. They barked insistently, digging in the earth with almost supernatural energy, as if guided by an unseen force. Their barking echoed in the icy air, breaking the heavy silence of the cemetery. Little by little, the villagers began to approach, drawn by the commotion. When they arrived, they discovered with horror and fascination that the dogs had unearthed something terrifying. The freshly turned earth revealed bones, but not only that, a small notebook, worn by time, also emerged from the ground, as if Clara herself had wanted to leave behind a message to be discovered one day. This prologue was only the beginning. For beneath the grave, beneath the earth turned over by the dogs, lay a secret capable of forever changing the history of Ravenwood and revealing truths that no one could have ever imagined. The morning was cold and gray, and Ravenwood Cemetery was bathed in an almost oppressive silence. Dead leaves crunched under the feet of a few curious locals, drawn by the persistent barking of dogs. Rex and Luna had no idea of the crowd that was gathering. All they cared about was the freshly turned earth around Clara Williams's grave. Luna dug frantically, her paws kicking up clouds of damp earth, while Rex barked, sniffing at each hole as if he sensed the presence of something crucial. Their eyes shone with an almost human intelligence. The villagers backed away, some whispering warnings, others fascinated by what they saw. Is this his grave?" murmured an old woman, clutching her shawl. "Yes, but why these dogs?" replied a man in a trembling voice, his eyes fixed on the earth which moved as if it were breathing. Then, with a sharp crack, the earth crumbled further, revealing a fragment of rotten wood and a piece of yellowed paper. The dogs paused for a moment, as if waiting for someone to make a move. At that moment, Detective James Carter arrived. Tall, with a face weathered by years of difficult investigations, he weaved his way through the villagers. His gaze fell upon the dogs, then upon the partially uncovered coffin. A shiver ran down his spine. "No one has touched this grave for 5 years," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. He crouched down and examined the ground around the hole. "And yet, someone, or something, has disturbed the earth recently." He took off his gloves and began to gently move the earth. His fingers brushed against the rotting wood of the coffin and a small leather notebook that seemed untouched by time. The smell of earth and damp wood filled his nostrils, and a feeling of unease washed over him. The inhabitants remained silent, some crossing themselves, others murmuring prayers. The dogs, for their part, seemed proud of their discovery, wagging their tails but not leaving the grave. "Something tells me this isn't just an accident," Carter said, straightening up. "Clara Williams wasn't simply buried here by fate, she left a message. And I intend to find out what it is." As he held the notebook in his hands, the wind rose, blowing through the trees and rustling the dead leaves around the grave. The cemetery seemed to hold its breath, as if it knew that the long-buried truth was about to burst into the open. The rumor of the dog's discovery spread like wildfire throughout the village of Ravenwood. The inhabitants spoke in hushed tones, some frightened, others curious to know the truth about what lay hidden beneath Clara Williams's grave. But no one was prepared for the arrival of James Carter, the detective renowned for solving the most complex and mysterious cases. Carter entered the cemetery, his black coat billowing behind him in the icy wind. His gray eyes scanned the grounds with a cold, methodical intensity. He knelt before the partially uncovered coffin, examining the fragments of rotten wood and the freshly turned earth. "It's strange," he murmured, more to himself than to the villagers around him. "Someone wanted to hide what was here, but nature, and these dogs, have revealed everything." He took out his investigation notebook and began noting every detail: the position of the bones, the condition of the coffin, the dog claw marks, and even the leaves scattered around. Each element seemed to tell a story, but this one was darker than anything he had encountered before. An old man approached timidly, trembling slightly. "Detective, do you think my family?" Carter looked up, his gaze piercing. "I don't make assumptions. I work with evidence. And believe me, every clue counts." Then he turned to the dogs, Rex and Luna, who were watching his every move. "You found something important, haven't you? You sense what others don't," he said softly, almost respectfully. The dogs inclined their heads, as if to confirm his words. Upon closer examination of the yellowed notebook discovered near the coffin, Carter noted half-erased inscriptions, names, dates, and incomplete sentences. Some lines appeared to be written by a trembling hand, others in a hurried, almost panicked hand. "Clara wanted to leave a message," Carter murmured. "Something serious. Something we wanted to bury with her." As he carefully folded the notebook to take it away, a shiver ran down his spine. The wind suddenly picked up, making the bare branches of the trees snap. The villagers cowered, sensing an unseen presence hovering over the cemetery. Carter, however, felt that this was only the beginning. The truth about Clara would soon emerge, and it would shatter the entire village of Ravenwood. Back in his office, Detective James Carter placed Clara's notebook on the table, the cold morning light filtering through the blinds. Each page seemed fragile, as if it could disintegrate at the slightest touch. Yet, he knew it held the key to the entire case. He began to leaf through the pages, his gaze scrutinizing each word, each scribble. Incomplete names, sometimes crossed out. Dates marked precisely, some surrounded by strange symbols. Fragmented sentences, "They can't know. I need to speak to the pact, if someone discovers." Carter's heart sank. This notebook wasn't just a diary, it was a warning. Clara had wanted to alert someone, but hadn't had time to finish her sentences. Suddenly, a piece of paper slipped from between the pages. It was a drawing, crude but meaningful, a tree, its roots buried deep, and human figures around it. Next to it, a word was written in shaky letters: "Buried." Carter frowned. The image evoked the tomb, but also something hidden, something more sinister. Each symbol seemed to indicate that there was a deeper truth, carefully concealed by those around him. He decided to trace the names mentioned in the notebook. Some belonged to influential inhabitants of the village, others to people no one had spoken of for years. Carter began to understand that Clara hadn't disappeared by chance, she had discovered something that some had done everything to bury, literally. As he examined a page bearing his own family name, a soft noise resounded behind him. The dogs, Rex and Luna, were there, silent but attentive, as if watching over the notebook and the man who was finally paying attention to the truth. "You found me, Clara," Carter murmured, his throat tight. "And now I'm going to find out what you were trying to tell us." This was the beginning of an investigation that would take him far beyond simple disappearances. Each clue he discovered would bring the light closer to deeply buried secrets, and the further he progressed, the more he sensed the shadow of a conspiracy that surpassed anything he could have imagined. James Carter spent the entire day questioning the residents and tracing the names written in the notebook. Each door he knocked on revealed worried glances, stifled whispers, and sometimes, silences heavy with menace. The truth seemed buried deep, protected by fear and lies. He finally went to the Williams house, Clara's family home. The house, imposing but aging, exuded an atmosphere of well-kept secrets. The walls were adorned with old portraits where each family member wore a frozen, icy smile, but their eyes seemed to hide shadows. "I am Detective James Carter. I am investigating the disappearance of Clara Williams," he declared as he crossed the threshold. Clara's father, Richard Williams, paled slightly. His wife, Margaret, looked away. And the eldest sister, Elizabeth, pressed her lips tightly together. "You're here to dredge up old, pointless memories," Richard replied, his voice strained. Clara is gone. She's no longer with us." Carter noted every detail, every hesitation. He knew that fear and lies could be read in gestures as much as in words. He took out Clara's notebook and placed it in front of them. "This notebook contains names and dates, events that Clara wanted to reveal. And I believe it speaks of your family." A heavy silence fell. Margaret clasped her hands to her chest, Elizabeth averted her eyes, and Richard frowned. "We've lost a daughter, Detective. It's not a secret, it's a tragedy." But Carter knew it was much more than that. The details in the notebook indicated that Clara had uncovered something dangerous: illegal transactions, inheritance disputes, pacts that were never meant to be revealed. Clara had been too curious, too brave, and someone had wanted to silence her. "She didn't die by chance," Carter said firmly. "Someone hit her. And her diary is proof that her disappearance wasn't an accident." For the first time, the Williamses exchanged furtive glances. The walls of the house seemed to vibrate with tension. Clara hadn't just disappeared, she'd been smothered by those who should have protected her. And now, her secret was finally about to be revealed. News of James Carter's investigation spread quickly throughout the village of Ravenwood. The whispers that had circulated for 5 years became stifled shouts, and every resident suddenly seemed to eye their neighbor with suspicion. The secrets that many believed were buried with Clara were beginning to resurface. In the small village grocery store, the locals whispered behind the cash registers. "Did you hear? The detective spoke to the Williams family, the notebook, he says Clara knew something." "Something serious?" replied another voice. What if other families were involved? Even the normally carefree children felt the heavy, strange atmosphere. The dogs, Rex and Luna, had become a familiar presence in the village, as if their instincts had awakened slumbering consciences. Carter, for his part, continued questioning the residents. Every detail, every hesitation, every fleeting glance provided him with valuable clues. He began to connect the names in the notebook to past events, minor disappearances, unexplained thefts, family arguments. Everything seemed to point to one thing: Clara had been a victim of those she trusted, and her curiosity had threatened a carefully maintained web of lies. One evening, as the wind swept through the deserted streets of the village, Carter crossed paths with Martha Green, a neighbor who had been friends with Clara. She was visibly trembling. "Detective. I never meant to say, but Clara had discovered something terrible. She was talking about secrets that could destroy several families in the village." Carter nodded, mentally noting each word. "Thank you, Martha. You've just confirmed what I suspected. But now we have to be careful. Those who made Clara disappear don't want the truth to come out." As night fell, the village seemed enveloped in a pervasive sense of unease. The inhabitants locked their doors, exchanged worried glances, and murmured prayers. Even those who had never believed the rumors began to doubt their own safety. True to their instincts, the dogs remained near Clara's grave, like silent guardians. Their presence reminded everyone that the truth, though forgotten, could not be buried forever. In this climate of fear and suspicion, Carter knew that each passing day brought the village closer to breaking point. Clara's secrets were no longer just words in a notebook, they had become a burden for the entire community, and everyone now had to choose between loyalty, lies, or the truth. The sun had barely risen over Ravenwood when James Carter returned to the cemetery. The morning mist enveloped the tombstones in a mysterious veil, and each step he took in the damp grass seemed to resonate with an ominous echo. Rex and Luna were already waiting for him, sitting by Clara's grave, their eyes bright and watchful. Carter knew that these dogs hadn't discovered Clara by chance. Their instincts had led them to something the humans had tried to conceal. He watched Rex sniff the earth precisely, then Luna gently scratch at a corner of the grave. "You're still looking for something, aren't you?" Carter murmured, crouching down to examine the floor. Little by little, under the dog's paws, fragments of wood and earth revealed themselves to be remains of objects buried with Clara, a broken medallion, a small metal box containing letters, and crumpled papers that seemed to have been carefully hidden. Carter carefully picked up each item, mentally noting its arrangement and condition. The letters contained names, places, and dates, clear indications that Clara had witnessed illegal transactions and family disputes shrouded in silence and fear. As he examined the locket, a detail caught his eye, an almost invisible engraving on the side, depicting a symbol he had seen before in Clara's notebook. This symbol seemed to connect Clara to a larger secret, something the Williams family had gone to great lengths to hide. The dogs seemed to understand the importance of each discovery. Luna barked softly when Carter put something aside, and Rex continued to sniff every nook and cranny, determined not to miss anything. "They found what we've been looking for a long time," Carter murmured. "Clara wanted someone to uncover the truth. And now, thanks to them, we have a chance to understand what really happened." Reviewing his notes, Carter realized that the clues left by Clara and revealed by the dogs formed an invisible map leading directly to the truth. Each fragment, each symbol, each name cut from the letters brought the detective closer to the final revelation: the Williams family hadn't just ignored the danger, they had orchestrated it. As the wind rustled among the tombstones and the dogs continued their silent watch, Carter knew the moment to confront those responsible was drawing near. The truth was no longer buried, and soon Ravenwood would discover the depth of the lie that had cost Clara Williams her life. Evening was falling on Ravenwood, tinting the sky with shades of purple and orange. James Carter stood before the Williams' large house, Clara's notebook and the discovered objects neatly packed in a briefcase. Each step he took toward the door seemed to resonate with an invisible weight, the weight of the truth that was finally about to be revealed. Inside, Richard, Margaret, and Elizabeth Williams were gathered in the living room. The air was thick with tension. Not a word had been spoken since Carter's arrival, but everyone knew that the moment of confrontation was imminent. "I know you're hiding something," Carter began, his voice firm but calm. "Clara discovered secrets you wanted to keep buried. Her notes, her letters, and even the objects found in her grave prove it." Elizabeth swallowed, her hands trembling on her knees. Margaret looked away, her lips pressed tightly together. Richard remained motionless, but his eyes betrayed a sudden fear. "You don't understand." Richard tried. "We just wanted to protect." "Protect?" Carter interrupted. "Protect someone by burying them alive? By erasing their evidence?" The letters and the notebook were placed on the table, within everyone's reach. Carter showed the engraved locket, the fragments of wood, and the crumpled letters. Each piece of evidence was irrefutable proof that Clara had been the victim of a family conspiracy. Margaret suddenly burst into tears. "We didn't know, we thought." Elizabeth, her eyes filled with tears and mingled anger, murmured, "She found out everything, and we couldn't do anything, nothing to protect her." But Carter shook his head. "You didn't protect her. You did everything you could to suppress the truth. Clara wasn't just a victim of fate, she was betrayed by those she trusted." Tensions rose as Richard tried to deny everything, but every word he uttered seemed to backfire. The evidence was overwhelming. Alerted by the rumors and drawn by the commotion, the townspeople began to gather outside the house, murmuring and whispering accusations. Carter, sensing that the situation was reaching its breaking point, concluded, "The truth has come out, and it will never be buried again. You will have to answer for your actions before the law." The silence that followed was heavy and oppressive. Even the dogs, Rex and Luna, sat calmly, as if they understood that their role had been crucial in revealing this secret. The Williams family, once so proud and influential, now faced the consequences of their choices, while the entire village realized the magnitude of the betrayal. That night, Ravenwood understood that the most carefully buried lies always end up resurfacing, and that the truth, guided by the courage of a young girl and the instinct of 2 dogs, could change everyone's destiny. Clara's notebook lay open in the center of the living room, in front of the Williams family and Detective James Carter. Each page seemed to throb with a dark energy, as if the young girl, despite her death, still spoke through its words. Carter read aloud a few passages. "They think I know nothing, but I saw the hidden safe, the illegal transactions, the stolen jewelry. If I talk, everything will collapse." Elizabeth stifled a sob. Margaret lowered her head. Even Richard seemed unable to meet the detective's gaze. Every word spoken seemed to strike him like a blade. Then Carter showed a series of letters hidden in the notebook. They revealed the extent of the conspiracy. Clara had uncovered a network of thefts and trafficking orchestrated by influential members of her own family, with the complicity of some Ravenwood residents. She had taken secret notes, planning to expose these crimes, but had been silently threatened and eliminated before she could act. "She knew everything," Carter murmured. "And you buried her to stifle the truth." Margaret burst into tears. I didn't want this to happen to her. I just thought that if we hid her, everything would disappear." Elizabeth, her anger mixed with pain, cried out, "You have betrayed her. Our own sister." Carter, taking a deep breath, added, "Clara left this evidence so that justice could be served. And now, there's no going back. Every name, every date, every symbol in this notebook corresponds to a truth you can no longer deny." The letters also revealed an even more terrifying surprise. Some of the illegal transactions involved respectable families in the village, including figures no one would have suspected. Clara had witnessed everything, and her notebook had been her ultimate weapon against the silence and corruption. Rex and Luna, sitting near the door, seemed to observe the scene with astonishing gravity. Their silent presence reinforced the weight of the truth, reminding everyone that justice could emerge unexpectedly. The notebook had revealed what no one had dared imagine. Clara had not only been a tragic victim, she had become the symbol of a fight against lies and buried secrets. And now, the light of truth was finally bursting into the Williams house, revealing the full extent of the conspiracy that had cost the life of a courageous young girl. News of the truth about Clara Williams spread like wildfire through the village of Ravenwood. The inhabitants, who had long turned a blind eye to secrets and lies, were now confronted with the reality. Some of their neighbors and even respected figures had been complicit in a plot that had cost the life of an innocent young girl. With the evidence from the notebook and the items discovered by the dogs, Carter coordinated the arrests. The Williams family members were questioned by the police, and each confession revealed another facet of the horror Clara had tried to expose. The letters, the locket, and even the drawings in the notebook became crucial evidence in court. The trial was swift but intense. Villagers flocked to the courthouse, both fascinated and horrified. Margaret and Elizabeth, though devastated, were forced to testify about their family's actions. Richard Williams, the mastermind behind Clara's disappearance, was charged with complicity in murder and tampering with evidence. "Clara has not been forgotten," Carter declared during the hearing, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom. "She left behind the truth, and that truth allowed justice to prevail." When the verdict was delivered, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. The Williams family was convicted, and several residents implicated in the conspiracy were also tried. The community, though shocked, finally began to understand that lies and corruption could not last forever. In the village streets, Rex and Luna, the dogs who had revealed everything, wandered among the inhabitants. Their role had been crucial. Without their instinct, the truth might have been buried forever. The villagers began to murmur their thanks to these dogs, symbols of justice and loyalty. James Carter, standing by Clara's grave, felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Justice had been served, but he knew the village would now have to rebuild its trust and heal its wounds. Clara, despite everything, had succeeded in making her voice heard. And for Carter, that was the greatest victory. Truth had triumphed, even in the deepest darkness. A few weeks after the trial, the village of Ravenwood was slowly beginning to rebuild. The inhabitants, still reeling from the revelations, were striving to heal their wounds and restore lost trust. But one presence remained in everyone's hearts, that of Clara Williams, whose courage and determination had allowed the truth to be revealed. A ceremony was held near her grave. Flowers covered the freshly turned earth, and the villagers, with moist eyes, came to place candles and letters, paying homage to the young girl they had long forgotten. Rex and Luna were there, sitting faithfully by his side, silent but vigilant. Their presence had become a symbol for the entire village. Truth can emerge even from the most unexpected sources, and loyalty and instinct can change the course of events. James Carter, observing the ceremony, felt a deep emotion. He knelt near the grave and placed Clara's notebook on the stone. "You won, Clara," he murmured. "Justice has been served. Your courage was not in vain." Inspired by Clara's sacrifice and intelligence, the townspeople began to speak openly about their mistakes and rebuild relationships broken by fear and lies. Even the Williams family, though grieving and judged, began to acknowledge the gravity of their actions and seek redemption. The wind rustled gently through the cemetery trees, as if nature itself wished to honor Clara's memory. For the first time in 5 years, a soothing calm reigned over the village. The truth had triumphed, and with it, peace restored to a young girl whose voice, even after death, had guided the world toward justice. And while Rex and Luna remained near the grave, the light of the setting sun bathed the cemetery, illuminating the flowers and the stones. In this golden ray, everyone felt that Clara, at last, could rest in peace.